Ghouls, the undead, the children of the night, or as I like to call them, garlic eaters. Hi y'all, welcome to Phenomena, the show where I, your ghostly host with the most, will pick a topic within the horror, fantasy, and sci-fi genres, ask a bunch of questions about them, attempt to answer my own questions, then throw you guys a bone. Y'all comment back and tell me what you think. So today's episode, we will be talking about vampires. So, for those of you who don't know what a vampire is, don't worry, I got you. So there we go. Let's get started on the questions. My first question, why were vampires so popular in mainstream media? Like, I'm being very serious. There were so many different eras throughout just film history alone where vampires were the thing. Things as early as Dracula spawned so much. People loved Dracula. People loved vampires. I don't know why, but I will attempt to answer. I think a big part of liking vampires is the idea of liking not just immortality, but, the luxury that, the first vampires kind of brought to it. If you're a big fan of horror movies like me, you know about Nosferatu, which came before Dracula. Nosferatu was made in 1922 and basically had a balding, gross vampire as the main character. So it was loosely based off of the original Bram Stoker's, Dracula book, but clearly it didn't follow through. The whole idea of Dracula being like super suave and like handsome in the book did not follow through in Nosferatu at all. Dude was pale and bald and gross looking and looked like a rat. That was just the vampire of the time. But after that, I guess people didn't really find that appealing, so they decided, hey, Dracula again. But this time it's actually Dracula, and this time we have Bela Lugosi as Dracula. And, it was a hit. Universal made this movie in 1931, and it was absolutely fantastic. It kicked off their entire Universal Monsters thing. Frankenstein, the Wolfman, the creature from the Black Lagoon, the Mummy. But with Dracula came a lot of Dracula sequels. You had, a bunch of weird, rebooted Dracula stuff in the 70s with Christopher Lee as Dracula. He's also considered one of the more classic Draculas as well. This was a very interesting trend, but it was also a very familiar trend that you can put into almost like any movie, and people knew what you were talking about and they were excited enough to watch it. I feel like this was definitely the case in from the 80s to about the late 2000s, in my opinion. This was the era that I knew about the most. Interview with the Vampire, Blade, Twilight, Underworld, Ultraviolet, which was a one-off, but I hope that you guys would know about that. Van Helsing, The Little Vampire, 30 Days of Night, I Am Legend, which I still to this day don't know if it's an actual vampire movie, but it's close enough. From the anime side of things, for those of you who are big anime fans, Blood the Last Vampire was one of the big vampire anime that was actually pretty terrifying. Now, obviously, this kind of led to an overblown market eventually, but we'll get into that with the second question that I have, which I'm pretty sure all of us can kind of answer together, or at least have a similar answer to this. Why did the vampire trend suddenly end? By the end of the Twilight craze, I remember people just being so tired of supernatural things, vampires and werewolves and ghosts and ghoulies, or whatever, the case may be. And I understand that. I was among the few that were kind of tired of seeing the same thing rehashed over and over again. This is also the era where the beginning of doing reboots and continuous sequels that no one asked for and no one wanted. It was kind of getting tiring by that point. But I think overall, it might be the same thing that happens with this mainstream superhero thing that's happening now. People are getting tired, you know, and they want to know, oh, what's going to be the next thing? Bring Blade back. Do that. Because I love Blade. Bring back him, bring back Spawn, and choose, like, some actual, like good writers. Please. The point I'm trying to make is that people got tired and no one was really doing anything original. Like, you have so many vampire myths that you can go into, like, all around the world. That could have been very different, and that could have, you know, brought a different sort of vampire creature. In 30 Days of Night, you did kind of have that, where they were not... they were vampires, you know, but, like, they were more wild and animalistic than they were gentlemanly, and, you know, the classic Dracula, where he's very suave, he's very mysterious, he's very well put together, in order to convince his victims that he's, like, you know, a safe person, and then, you know, just saying. So you could have done something a little different. I mean, there are plenty of really interesting mythological creatures from other cultures that are vampires that, you know, could have been thrown into things. But I just feel like by the time you probably thought of anything original, people were already tired of it and they just wanted to move on. That's my take on it. I'm wondering if y'all think that there was, like, a specific movie or a franchise or anything like that that just kind of, like, ended it all for you. My last question is kind of just a fun, open-ended thing. You know, answer it however you'd like. Some of y'all already probably have an answer to this, but I implore you to think a little bit harder. I'm curious to see why you might, you know, think the way that you do. Do we want to see the vampire trend come back? I don't know. I feel like it would be a pretty interesting thing to kind of come back and balance out the superhero aspect. Why not? Hot Topic could come back. Give me your honest opinions down in the comments. Let me know what you think. Is it worth it, you know, to bring back, you know, a vampire series or something like that? And how would you like it to be? Would you like it to be more like The Strain, 30 Days of Night, or Underworld, where it's a lot more serious and action-packed and intense in its mythos? Or would you like to see it be a little bit more, like, lighthearted and, you know, self-aware, like What We Do in the Shadows, which is a mockumentary, or Dracula, Dead and Loving It, a parody? I'm curious to see what you guys have to say. So let me know down in the comments what you think, and if you enjoyed my first episode and you would like to see more, please leave a like, leave a question, and I'll see you next week. Thank you very much. Have a nice day, y'all.